Hey there, everyone, and welcome to the companion Star Trek Enterprise 20th anniversary celebration. I'm Ian Spelling. I guess I'm the closest thing in the world to a professional Star Trek fan. I've been covering it for decades now, dating back to when I was in college and writing about the original series for my college newspaper and interviewed Gene Roddenberry. So it's coming full circle all these years. I'm still writing about Lower Decks and about Discovery and hopefully about the other shows as well. 20 years ago this September, audiences were taken right back to the dawn of Starfleet and the maiden voyage of the Starship Enterprise with the broadcast of the pilot, Broken Bow. This was watched by a record at the time, 12 million people. We're delighted today to have Jim Conway, or James L. Conway as he's technically credited, the director of that episode, and actually many other episodes of Star Trek across an 18-year span of the show, of the franchise. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Jim Conway. Hey, Jim, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Hello to everybody.
So let's start with this. 20th anniversary is coming up of Enterprise. How mind-blowing is it to you that we're talking 20 years have passed since you worked on that pilot?
It's incredible. And it's funny how it all came to be because my time at Star Trek was stop and start because I was, besides being a director, I'm a writer and a producer, and I would come and go from the Star Trek universe as I was doing other projects. And Rick Berman, who was executive producer, had asked me to direct the pilot for Voyager, but I wasn't available. Right. And then he asked me to do the last episode of Next Gen, the finale of the series. I wasn't available. And then he sent me the script for Enterprise. And at the time, I was executive vice president of Spelling Television. So I had a job. But I went to Aaron Spelling and Duke Vincent, who ran the company, Spelling Entertainment, which was owned by Paramount, which owned the Star Trek franchise, obviously. And I said, would you guys be all right if I went and directed the pilot? And Aaron gave me his blessing. So I left for 4 months to go prep and shoot the Enterprise pilot, and it was a thrill.
And just for the record, I am Ian Spelling, but no relation to Aaron Spelling, Tori Spelling, any Spellings. We figured that out over the years. Now,
too bad.
I always said to him, you don't want to be related. I'm coming after your money. He's like, good point, good point. Now, you directed the Enterprise pilot, but you directed TNG, Deep Space, and Voyager before that. How did Rick finally come to you and say, now's the time, you got to do this? Why you? Why was he so interested in having you either direct a pilot or a finale?
He loved my work. There's something about me clicking with the Star Trek franchise. I loved it like you did. I watched it in college. In my frat house down below, we had a basement with the TV, and after classes in the afternoon, it was then in syndication. This was 1969, 68, something like that. And I would watch it, and I just loved it. And then when I got to Hollywood, I was working, and I made a deal with Paramount I was directing MacGyver, and I made a deal with Paramount to do a number of episodes over the year, and they were launching a new syndicated show, Star Trek, The Next Generation. So I went in and I met everybody, and I was hired to do 2 episodes. I did, I think, episode 5 and the season finale. And right away, from when I started directing the first episode, Rick and I clicked. He loved my work. He loved how I blocked the scenes, how I interpreted stuff. And from then on, whenever I was free, I would call him. He would find a place for me to come in. And I did Deep Space Nine, which I loved that show because it was so different. It was dark. It was moody. You could tell different kinds of stories. Voyager was fun. And then when Enterprise came along and I read the script, I said, this is great because it's so different. It's more primitive. And the ship, I wanted to have it feel much more like a submarine and not the big glossy lights and the big look of Next Gen. And we really had a great time designing that. And the script was fantastic.
Now, pilots are massively important to any show since more or less they set the template for what is to come. So what do you remember of the challenges specifically on directing Broken Bow, which set Enterprise in motion?
The most important thing to do if you have a great script and it's a pilot is get a great cast. And so we set about casting the show. And from the very beginning, they had in mind Scott Bakula. Carrie McCluggage, who was the president of Paramount Television, had worked with him on the time travel show.
Quantum Leap.
Thank you, Quantum Leap, and was a friend of his. and he would be perfect, we all knew, for the captain. So we set about trying to cast the rest of the people, and that was arduous in terms of finding some people was harder than others, but it took a couple of months to get the cast together. And there's a story that I'm not sure everybody knows, but the first week of shooting of the pilot, Kerry was in London doing some business, and he got the dailies late. So we shot the first 3 or 4 days, and he saw the dailies, and he didn't like Scott's hair because he imagined it the way it was for Quantum Leap or whatever it was. He didn't like his hair.
Right.
And this was back in the day when you couldn't just send stuff, over the air like we can now through the internet. So we had to actually go back and reshoot. We fixed his hair the way that Kerry would be happy. And we went reshot Scott's scenes from the first 3 or 4 days of production, which was an amazing thing to do, but not unheard of. Pilots are so important. You want to make sure everything about it is right.
Right. Now, I don't think I knew that story. Now, many fans consider Broken Bow one of the best, if not the best, Trek pilot. How satisfied were you with the way it all came together?
I was very satisfied. I'd seen all the pilots, obviously, and I thought the script was better. Again, it's all the script. You have to have a great script. And I thought it was the best script of all the pilots. And I too felt it was the best of them all, but I was a little bit biased. And the fun part of that was it was basically a 2-hour movie.
Right.
And we screened it for the cast and crew as a movie in the big Paramount Theater where they showed all their features. So, a few hundred people were all gathered together there, packed house, stereo sound, and screened it as a movie before it went on the air. And that was a thrill. I had my wife and daughter next to me, and it was really a great moment.
Huh. Now, you had several interesting guests in that pilot, including Joe Ruskin, who had worked on multiple Star Trek projects, including the original series. He played Galt, that great character Galt. And you also had Tiny Lister, who just passed away.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, what do you remember of working? I mean, who among your guest cast were you particularly impressed by? And do you have any anecdotes about those two gentlemen that I just mentioned?
Well, with Tiny, I do remember that he was going to do his own stunt of jumping from the silo. He bursts out and he jumps down from the silo. And when he did, he hurt his ankle. So we then had to double the stuntman actor because he hurt his ankle during the jump. But he was a sweet, wonderful guy. The fun thing about a lot of the guest stars from Star Trek is because there was such heavy makeup on them, oftentimes because they were Shakespearean actors, they could go from show to show, makeup to makeup, and play all the sorts of different roles, and nobody knew it was the same actor.
Right.
And that was great for the first actor you mentioned.
Joe Ruskin.
Yeah, for Joe. He was able to do that.
And what did it mean to you to know that 12 million people watched that episode? I'm going to make a wild guess that that's probably the highest rated episode of any series you directed.
I think it probably was. At the time, I was executive producer of Charmed and working for the CW. And so this was on UPN, which was the rival independent TV station at the time. And so as those numbers were so high, I know that the people at the executives I was working with at or the WB, as it was called then, were pleased for my success, but not so pleased for my success because it was a competing show.
There you go. All right, now sticking with Enterprise, you also directed Judgment, Damage, and In a Mirror Darkly. People really love all the Mirror episodes of the shows, but it so broke the mold on Enterprise. I
Yes.
wanted to chat a little bit about that. How much fun did you have with that one? And what was your sense of how much fun your cast, especially Linda Park, had doing the Mirror episode?
It was one of the most fun episodes I've ever done, and all the actors loved being able to play the opposite personality of who they were. And Linda was unbelievable as that vamp. She just threw herself into it completely. She was fantastic. Every actor loved being able to play the mirror image of themselves. I also loved it because I got to sit in the original Star Trek set. I have a picture of me sitting in the original Star Trek set that they built for the show.
And then wasn't the guest actor who was kissing Linda particularly excited that he got to do it for 3 days?
He couldn't believe his luck. And he told me so.
There you go. Some people get paid for roles they don't deserve to get paid for, right?
He's a character actor who plays a lot of heavies, never gets to do love scenes like that. And then he's got all these scenes back to back with Linda. Yeah, he was really happy.
And then what do you remember of the other two episodes of Judgment and Damage?
I don't remember any specific things. I know that in each case, it was just fun to get back and see the cast and crew once a year. I was still doing Charmed at the time, and so I would just come and do one episode a year. on the Enterprise sets, and it was really fun for me to do that.
How different were the moods from set to set to set? And how much of that was predicated on the star of the show?
The mood on the Next Generation was the most fun of all of them. All of those actors were great fun, great friends, still are. And it got to the point where there was so much kidding around, especially if they were all on the bridge together in a scene. The only way they would ever shut up to do the scene is when the clapper came down and they had to start acting, because they would just be kidding around and teasing each other. And they loved each other, and they still do. Like, you know, the people who follow the Twitter feeds and Instagram, they can see these guys are always taking pictures together. They're always going to conventions together.
Right.
They're really good friends. Voyager was, I only did a few of those, and it was early in the run, so I don't know how it was at the end, but when I was there, they were all very friendly. Kate was fantastic. She was a wonderful actor and leader. DS9 was a little different because Avery is a wonderful actor, but he's a little standoffish sometimes. And so around that casting crew, and he was there, they were just careful. They wanted to give him the space and let him work the way he did. So there wasn't much outward fun as there was on Enterprise, for example,
right.
and on Next Generation. And the Enterprise cast was terrific. They all liked each other. They had a good time. It was really fun working with atmosphere there. So it was a really good place to go.
And then how do you think your directing style evolved over your 18 years with the franchise? Would you recognize the first episode you did with the last episode you did and say, that's the same guy, it's just a 18-year through line?
I don't think so, because directing styles changed a lot. My directing style evolved as the business evolved. You know, much more camera movement, much more forced perspective. In terms of the actual use of the camera, I became much more cinematic, and as did television, as we progressed. In terms of working with actors, the comfortableness, I was so comfortable with the franchise, knowing things about Star Trek, that I felt just at home there. So I was never intimidated by the technology, the special effects, because I had my whole career was. What's interesting about special effects is when we did Next Generation, it was the very dawn of digital work, and you had to take the camera and you had to nail it to the floor. You had a 4-pin camera, BNCR, just for that, so that the film didn't move at all, because you had to have a green screen and people couldn't move in the green screen. It was very primitive visual effects. And by the end, you could do it on an iPhone if you want to just move it around and do whatever, and they can stick it in because it evolved so much. But because all the shows I did seemed to be involved in a lot of visual effects, I was very comfortable with all that and could contribute to the visualization, the ideas of what to do. In terms of working with actors, I've always loved actors. I'm married to an actress. So I've always enjoyed that, and interacting with the crew and the cast, and letting them flesh out and feel who the characters are and trust them. I mean, they're the ones who live with these characters 24 hours a day. So you have to listen to their opinions about the scenes. So yes, my style changed, not so much with working with actors, but definitely my visual style.
Right. Now, I mentioned earlier that you directed TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. In fact, you directed me in an episode of Voyager. I was an extra in Innocence, actually. We don't have enough time to discuss all of your episodes or why you didn't give me a line of dialogue in Innocence, but we'll put that another time. I was just an extra, but no reason.
Didn't we kill you?
No. I was just in the background. I was one of the with the kids get off the ship. I'm behind the bushes with a phaser in my hand. But anyway, we don't have enough time to discuss all of your episodes, but which one or two or three were you happiest with aside from Enterprise?
I did a great Voyager that had Q in it. Anytime you get to work with Q is great. So the Voyager I did with Q.
That's the one with Garrett Graham. That was a great episode. Yeah.
Great episode. And I loved John. He's just a delight to be around. And then Duet. Duet was my favorite. I did many DS9s and I loved them.
That was
Duet.
The one with Harris Yulin. Harris Yulin was your main guest star. He was great.
And that was one where I didn't know how it was going to turn out when we were shooting it, because he had to have so much makeup on. It took 4 hours in the morning to put it on. He'd have to get there at 3 a.m. And he got so tired by the end of the week that he had trouble remembering his lines. So he had to feed the lines. And Harris, because such a good actor, could handle that. But he didn't get the sense of a long scene because it was being interrupted by the script supervisor queuing. Right. so I didn't really know what we had until it was cut together. And when I saw it, I was blown away. It was such a good show. I also particularly liked the one where they became a UFO and they went down to Earth on Deep Space Nine. Little Green Man. I directed a movie called Hangar 18, so I had a deep affection for that whole story. Yep. And I had a great time with that. You know, there wasn't much, there was always some humor on DS9, but there wasn't a lot. This episode had a lot of humor, and I loved doing humor. That was great fun for me.
So in general, be it Star Trek or any of your other shows or movies, what kind of a set do you like to run? What's a mood of a Jim Conway set?
It's very energetic, fun. I love hearing ideas from a lot of people. I'm very specific. When I do my homework ahead of time and I walk onto a set and I know exactly where I want people to stand, how I want to cover it, angles I want. And I'll tell them the blocking I have in mind. I'll take whatever input they have, but it's very decisive. You know, I know exactly what I want. So it's cut, print, we're over here, cut, print, we're over here. Everyone's together on it. We have a lot of fun. It's all well prepped. I like to laugh. I like jokes. I keep it easy. No yelling, no tension. I keep it as loose and positive as I can.
And then have you followed Star Trek since you've not been in that world? Have you checked out Discovery? Did you check out Lower Decks or Picard?
I have checked out all of those shows. I loved seeing Patrick working again. Discovery, I think, is getting better. The first season, I was disappointed with the finale. I thought they created a great dilemma leading up to the last episode, and then it sort of resolved itself so quickly. I wish we had the visual effects and the budget for visual effects that they have now. It's remarkable to see. Very impressive to see the work that they're doing. And I'm looking forward to the new one. I think it looks really exciting.
And if your phone rang and they said, hey, you know, we'd love to bring you in, would you be interested in directing a Picard or Strange New Worlds? How open to that would you be?
I would love to do that. In fact, I almost, in a way, I got to do it because I directed an episode of Orville.
Right.
And that was really pretty much a next generation look and feel in terms of everything it does, including the DP, Marvin Rush, who was my DP for many Star Trek episodes and did the Enterprise pilot. We set the look together. So Seth is a great guy, and it was fun doing that. But he's a huge Star Trek fan. Even on it a couple of times, I think. And so that was almost an homage in many ways to the next generation.
Right. Now, your credits date all the way back to about 1976, if I'm not mistaken. Beyond the realm of Star Trek, Jim, which of your credits are you proudest of? If somebody watches this and says, what else has this guy directed? What would he recommend I watch? What would you steer them toward?
Right now, I would say I just finished 5 seasons of The Magicians, which was a fantastic show that was on Sci-Fi and is now available on Netflix. And it was brilliantly written and produced, great cast. And it was, for those who don't know, it's sort of a dark, sexy Harry Potter with a bunch of young kids in their early 20s who go to a magic school, and then all the troubles that they have. And it's a wonderful cast. It was great fun to do. And it was in Vancouver, which I spent a lot of time in. And that's a show I really was proud of. And then Charmed, I did Charmed for 8 years, all 8 seasons, and as a director, producing director for the last 5. And I love that. The cast and crew was fantastic. And you know, it's a little silly dodging fireballs all the time, but we had a lot of fun with that. That was a great crew, and we were together for 8 seasons. It was wonderful.
And then early in your career, you mentioned Hangar 18, but you also directed The Boogans, which I saw in a movie theater. I paid my $6 to see it at Sunrise Mall in Massapequa, Long Island, and directed a TV movie that I always thought was really interesting called Fall of the House of Usher, which was Martin Landau, Charlene Tilton, Ray Walston, and Robert Hayes from the Airplane movies. I believe pre-Airplane, if I'm not mistaken, or right around the time. When you look back to those particular projects, I mean, you mentioned Hangar 18 already, but do you remember those? Did they bring back?
Absolutely. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story about Robert Hayes and Airplane. So we're doing the Fall of the House of Usher, and it's a 30. We're based in Park City, Utah, and the sets for this particular thing were like half an hour away, so we'd all be in a car together driving every morning. And Bob had just been cast in Airplane, hadn't been made yet, and he was reading to us from the script as we were driving to work in the morning. We were all sitting there laughing. And then I'll tell you another funny story. Ray Walston, who's a wonderful guy, great actor. He was after he was leaving doing our movie, he was going to Chicago to do a play. My mother lived in Chicago. And I said, hey, Ray, my mother lives in Chicago. Maybe you should look her up and have dinner. He did. And they had
Really?
dinner together. Yes, he's a wonderful guy.
And how
And
impressed was your mom?
she was blown away. She was blown away. It was great. It was great. And working with Martin Landau, who worked with so many wonderful directors, and that was a thrill. He's such a good actor. That was a fun movie of the week to do. We did a lot. We had a company called Sun Classic, and we were based in Park City, Utah. We started with a show called Grizzly Adams,
Yep.
which a lot of people remember. And
Dan
based on the company that owned us also owned the Classics Illustrated Comics. For those who don't know, Classic Illustrated Comics were comics that were basically all the famous books, Last of the Mohicans, Huck Finn, and kids would read them. This is before Cliff Notes. Would read the comics instead of reading the books for class, but they were beautifully illustrated. So we sold NBC a series of 12 movies, Classic Illustrated Presents, and gave us a chance to make all these wonderful movies like Fall of the House of Usher, and we did Huckleberry Finn and a lot of other things.
And then I got to ask you, The Boogans. Talk to me about that one. It was such a strange movie.
It was. I wish we could have made it in the digital world, because that creature was something else. And I just looked at it recently, and because the creature was so funky looking, we kept it on screen for so little time. I wish, and then I saw it at the end, we have much more of it you see than I wish we had. But here's a good thing about The Boogans. We went casting, like I said, I was in Park City, so we're going to LA to cast it. And an actress walks in, we chat, she reads, she leaves. I turned to the associate producer and said, I could marry that girl, Rebecca Balding, who got the starring role somehow. Well, Wednesday, the first week of shooting, we went out. That Saturday night, she proposed. And 4 weeks later, while still making the movie, we got married. And we just had our 40th anniversary on February 15th.
Congratulations. And how many kids and grandkids do we have?
2 daughters and 2 grandsons.
Wow. It's amazing how it all comes full circle, right?
And it's funny that everybody was saying it would never last. And I mean, getting married after 4 weeks is insane, but somehow it was right. And it's been great.
You know, I was talking with Howie Deutsch the other day for the 35th anniversary of Pretty in Pink. And he also directed Some Kind of Wonderful. And we were talking about how directors don't normally do this, actors normally do this. They'll take a memento from a set of a movie or a TV show. Right. His memento from Some Kind of Wonderful was his wife, Leah, who was the star of the movie. Right. So obviously you got quite the memento from The Boogans, but yeah. I'm bringing it back to Star Trek. Do you have anything? Did you take anything from any of the shows?
What I have is, I could almost, let's see. I'm going to turn this to get a, you see those slates on the wall on the left?
Yep.
Okay, well, those slates, there's one from each of the Star Trek shows.
Oh, really?
So I have a Next Generation, a Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise slate from when I was shooting.
Wow.
And that I love. Those are great to have.
So, Jim, let me ask you about the actors in the show and then finding their characters. You started with the pilot, so you actually had a hand in that. Give me a little bit of sense of helping them find their characters and what they did, taking it on their own after you helped set them up.
One of the most important thing is when you're casting for any show, but particularly a pilot, is the readings, because as you bring actors in, you have something in mind for what they're going to be. But as they audition, they often bring the character to life in a different way, and you start turning in that direction. And that's what we did with the Enterprise pilot. As each actor came in and performed, we saw different things and different nuances that could be brought into the character. And we incorporated it into the character. And then over time, they sort of take it over and you start hearing their voice and you start writing more specifically to their voice.
Great. And then who found their character the fastest, if you remember?
I'd have to say John Billingsley, because he came in and he suddenly did a voice and took on a character that isn't on paper and inhabited it beautifully. He just sort of brought this thing to 3 dimensions right away, and something we could not have imagined. So he nailed it right out of the gate.
And then we're also going to be talking to Dom Keating. What are your memories of working with him? Tell me a Dom story.
Oh my God, I'll tell you one from the pilot where in rehearsal, I can't remember the line. He'll remember the line, but he ad-libbed the line or said something on the line that was funny. And I was in the rehearsal, I was encouraging and saying, go on with that. And then when we're shooting this actual scene, a week or so later, and he did the same thing. And I said, stop, no, don't do that, don't do that. It completely threw him because we had done it in the rehearsal and I liked it, and then suddenly I wasn't liking it. And he always teased me about that afterwards. He'll give you the exact story, but it was funny. But he was a joy to work with, a very funny guy, friendly with everybody, and incredibly talented.
And then let's bring it back to Star Trek as we close out. I mean, obviously this is a massive phenomenon. It's gone on for decades. What does it mean to you to have your slice of involvement and your contribution to the franchise?
It's one of the proudest accomplishments of my life. I mean, you can talk about TV credits and, they all sort of fade with time because people, different generations see different shows, but everybody knows Star Trek and everybody remembers Star Trek because it's gone on for so long. And I'm so proud to have been involved from the very first season of Next Gen to the end of Enterprise. People know and love those shows. It was a great time in my life, just in terms of the experience of it, to have that contribution. So of all my credits, that's the one that gets the most attention and makes me the proudest.
Good deal. Well, thank you so much, Jim Conway, for being with us. Thank you, everyone at home, for keeping the faith. You are watching the Companion Star Trek Enterprise 20th anniversary celebration. So stay tuned for more in just a second, because we're not done yet. Again, thank you so much, Jim, for doing this. We appreciate it. We appreciate your time and your work. Thanks. You so much.
Thank you.
Be well. Take care. Thank you. Hi there, everybody, and welcome back to the Companion Star Trek Enterprise 20th anniversary celebration with me, Ian Spelling. I am here with the man behind the tactical station for 4 years and 98 episodes. He was the first into the fray as Lieutenant Malcolm Reed. Everybody, let's welcome Dominic Keating. Hey, Dom, great to have you. How are you?
I'm not bad, man. All things considered, I'm staying above it.
Under the circumstances, kind of crazy, right?
What a year it's been.
What a hell of a year, right?
On the bright side, I have COVID hair.
On the bright side,
this is the longest my hair has ever been in my entire life.
It looks good. Does it look
good? Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so before we talk about Star Trek and the Enterprise's 20th anniversary, which is amazing to me, let's get caught up on you and what you're doing these days. So A, how are you surviving the pandemic? And B, did you squeeze in any work either right before all this craziness kicked in or even now when they have all these protocols?
I actually did a job just before Christmas. It's a series called Phoenix. I'm not quite sure where it airs. I think it might be a cable show. But I did a few episodes of it in the height of the pandemic, and we got tested every 2 days, and it was all location. And a lot of it was outside, which was nice. Some of it was not, which was a little worrisome. But you know what? They pulled the whole damn thing off without any incident at all.
What's it about? What do you play? And I read that Garrett Wang is in it. Did you?
Yes, Garrett is in it. Yes, he plays. I've got a little fly. Come on, mate. Off you go. It's my housemate.
That's your new best friend.
I got now.
You just killed your best friend.
Come on, buddy. I told you about this. It's called Phoenix. It's some. I'm not entirely sure what it's about. It's about a girl that has uncovered some cyber crime. And it involves some nefarious characters, of which I play one of them, called Billy Blue. It was a rather unsavory sex trafficking mofo from London, and he was a lot of fun to play, I have to say.
Did we have the sexy mofo hair?
I did. It wasn't quite as long as this, but it was getting there, and I grew this for it and kept it. And and Garrett plays the cop, hot on my trail, I think. We never actually had a scene together, sadly. I shot before him, and then I got emails and texts from people on set saying he does the most incredible impression of you.
That's great. Got to ask, every actor associated with Star Trek has always worried about being typecast as a result of being in whatever show or movies that they were in.
Bring it on.
How concerned were you, and what's the reality been?
What's the reality been? Well, I don't think I've been typecast in any way. In fact, I've played nothing but villains since Malcolm, really. I mean, let me think that through. I mean, mostly villains. You know, I think the British thing, and I've got to think back. Well, I mean, honestly, I have such a sort of goldfish memory for what I do. It's, but yeah, no, I don't think I've been typecast at all, really. I'm quite versatile. I'm quite good with my voice, so I can, you know, change myself quite a bit. Sometimes I wonder whether that is a blessing or a curse, that you wouldn't be better off just getting typecast and pigeonholing, you know, that particular, you know, part.
Now, I got to ask, you mentioned your voice. One of the things that you did a couple of years back, it's actually 5 years ago now, which boggles my mind, is you read the Iliad.
I did.
That must have been I listened to a lot of that. That's
in 10 days.
Yeah, that must have been an unbelievable experige. Just what do
it was. Do you know what? I thought it was the most difficult thing I'd ever done in my acting career, until I then went on to read Jorge Borges's The Labyrinths. Do you know this Argentinian philosopher?
I know of it only because I saw that it was one of your other credits.
He wrote a book called The Labyrinths. That took me. The Iliad was like reading the cat on the mat next to that. I mean, I had to phonetically speak Arabic, Chinese, Italian, German. Do a voice for Jorge himself in some sort of Hispanic-y voice. It's without doubt, it's one of the most extraordinary pieces of writing I had the privilege to read, and I probably never would have done had I not been paid to read it. It was an educational read in the end, you know, it's for university students, I think. Yeah, and I thought that the Iliad was the, you know, the Everest of my career, but no, not until I'd read that. I mean, there were moments when it literally brought me to tears reading The Labyrinths, but it is an extraordinary read. Without doubt.
Dom, is it all under one umbrella of acting, performing, or do you see it as a totally different type of acting discipline from being in front of a camera when you do the voiceover work? Or
it is remarkably different in many ways, Ian. You have no idea how subtle the different sounds of your voice are until you hear them recorded. And what you think you read, and the inference that you gave and the inflection that you thought you had isn't there at all. It's a remarkable discipline. I just recently, I think it was right before the pandemic started, I did a voice for The Greyhound, Tom Hanks's movie, which is on Apple right now, playing the captain of the British boat in that flotilla. And it was I just watched it the other day for the first time. I don't get Apple TV, I don't have that. So, but I got sent one of the DVDs for, because I'm a member of BAFTA. So I finally watched it and I was like, oh, I'm in this. Quite, I didn't realize quite how much I was in it. And it was, Tom was in the room, God bless, and directed me through it. It was sorry, Mr. Hanks. It's a remarkable discipline. I've done quite a lot of voiceover work for video games, which I've never heard back, other than when I'm in the booth. But even then, what you think you gave doesn't translate, and if anything, it hones your craft. And my mother always said this to me when I embarked upon the misspent career of being an actor. She said, darling, your voice is the big tool in your bag, sir, and make sure it's good and strong and grounded. And never forgot that. So it is. I think it's helped me as an actor doing voice work, and in some ways it's easier on screen because you get all this and your eyes, right, to translate what you want to give the audience, and you don't get that with your voice. You just have your voice, right? And it's quite subtle. Yeah.
Let's go back in time 20 years. When I say 20 years ago that you started work on Enterprise, how mind-blowing is that? 20 years, that number?
It's pretty mind-blowing, mate. It really is. I mean, I have a milestone birthday in 4 months. And, wow. I thought 50 was something. Did you, dude?
There you go.
Crumpled old man.
And the hair made
Yeah.
you look at least 10 years younger. Come on.
Hey, baby. It's 20 years.
Let me ask you this a big, fat, broad question, and then we'll break it down a little bit. How satisfying was your experience, both as the actor playing Reed and as this young British guy, who hadn't been in the US for very long, getting caught up in the whole Trek phenomenon? Because it wasn't like you were on CSI. You were on, you know what I mean? It was a different world.
Yeah, I mean, getting that job
changed the game.
I remember the day that they finally rang up and told me that it was actually happening. I mean, Ron Surma told us that me and John Billings were the first two to get cast. And he told us that afternoon after we'd done our studio audition. I guess it was network audition, wasn't it? So that my buddy's back. That we'd gotten it. And then we didn't hear anything. At least I didn't hear anything. And Ron rang me up and said, you can't talk about this until business affairs call it through. And I was like, okay. Well, 2 days went by, nothing. 3 days went by, still nothing. And it kept going on. And then finally it happened. And I knew that this was a major, grab, and that we were probably going to do 7 years. Well, I thought we were going to do 7 years. I mean, it was like, why wouldn't we? Everyone else did. I blame Voyager, by the way. They come home in a timely fashion. But yeah, I did the first shot of the pilot. It was a little pop of me on the bridge at my little console there. And I remember taking that first step up onto the bridge itself, from the studio floor, and I'm thinking, wow, well, here goes, baby. Those years were joyous, Ian. I mean, I think about them quite a bit. And how lucky and fortunate we were to have those years, and to have a man like Scott at the helm who made, sets can be, not always happy places, mate. And it all depends on the mix of egos and characters that are there. And we were very fortunate to have him at the top of the food chain, number one on the call sheet. He was so generous and giving, and then that crew that had been together for nigh on 16, 17 years at that point. It was a well-oiled machine, and we had good chemistry, the rest of us. And I just embraced it. And I was old enough, I may have looked young, but I was about 37 or 38 when they cast me in that role. I think they thought I was in my under 35, certainly. And I was old enough and had been around the block a couple of times to know that this was, don't be blasé about this, Dom.
Right.
This is a good catch. And I really soaked up every minute of it. And I complained a bit about the 16, 17 hours in the trailers, but it was pretty easy. I had a bed to lie on, for sake.
There you go. So talk to me about Reed. How full a meal was he as a character? And where was he when we met him, and where was he when he ended? If Point Day was where you started, where do you think you finished with the guy?
I think when I got cast, we get these 3-line bios that tell you he was a stiff upper-lipped Brit, buttoned down, shy around women. I made a conscious decision quite early on. I'm not sure it was in the pilot, but certainly by about the 4th episode, I went, I can't just play him to these 3 lines that they, denoted. This is going to just be crucifyingly boring. And so I started to let Dominic leak out into Malcolm. And it worked, and they started writing. They saw that sort of 3-dimensional aspect to him. And they started writing a much more complicated man. And, I was always aware, I tell you, look, I managed to elbow and get in there. It was a triumvirate. It was the captain, Jolene, and Connor. And that's what Star Trek generally had been. They had 3 thrust characters. And I managed to create a 4th character that they could go to. And it worked out. And I ended up being unwittingly at the time, I ended up being the action man on the show. And you know, when Captain Archer screwed up again, Malcolm to the rescue, and it was a lot of fun being that guy, you know, and the cavalry charging in, and he had a sense of humor too. I let him have a sense of humor, and not just be that two-dimensional sort of three-line bio that they wrote for him.
Now, I got to ask you about that. A lot of actors on Star Trek have said over the years, what came down from the office is what had to be shot on the set, down to the comma and the period. You know,
they were pretty particular. I remember Jan, the script supervisor, coming up to me. I nailed some big speech in the pilot, and I was like, yeah, pro. And then she came over to me. She said, Dominic, you said and instead of R. You said but instead of if. You said, I'm like, are you kidding me? She went, not on this show. I managed to get a bit of
an open leash on that.
A wider berth, exactly. Because that was the British guy. I could ring up the office and go, British guy wouldn't say that. Well, what would he say, Dominic? Well, I'll get back to you on that. And I'd write a few lines. Connor, I know, they really, you know, he had to write what was on the page. And yeah. And they were strict. They were quite, I don't want to say precious, but they you know, and we were certainly in the era of the writer-producer is God on set. Not that they came often, but yeah, don't screw with them. You are replaceable. I mean, I remember saying to John Billingsley sometime in the first season, I mean, we're just working for the man, aren't we? And he just went,
Tom, what did you ever not get to play that you wanted to explore on the character?
I wouldn't have minded a proper sort of love interest. Connor got all the, you know, yeah, all that. I had the Big Mo, she was called. She was an Andorian, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you know, I bumped into her on a hike about 3-4 years ago up Runyon Canyon. She recognized me, God bless her, because I wouldn't have known her from a hole in the wall, but I only really knew her with the things. Right. She was a very charming girl. But that was as close as I got to, you know, some sort of romantic interest. So I wouldn't have minded a more serious, if we, you know, a bit of a backstory there. But I got some good stuff, you know. I mean, they got my mum and dad came on, didn't they? Lovely actors, Jane Carr and gosh, why am I blanking? I actually suggested him for the role. Guy Signer, God bless. I met Guy at a play reading when I first got off the boat here, and we became quite good friends. He was on a show called Heidi High in England, which was a sitcom, very popular. No, what was it called? Oh, not Heidi High. It was about the French resistance in the Second World War, done as a sitcom. It was hilarious. Hello. And Guy played one of the pissy German, you know, officers. He was hilarious. And God, I'm getting old. See, Ian, it's miserable. I swear to God, I'll forget my own sodding name one day.
Well, he's 73. He'll be 74 in October. He's 73. He'll be 74 in October.
God bless him.
At least you're younger. We're both younger.
Yeah.
Right?
He's a lovely man. I saw him in something recently. I'm trying to think what it was. He popped up in something because he went home, but he went back to England not long after I got the Star Trek. I think he helped. I think we used to go around and read scenes with each other before going to audition back in the days when you'd actually have to go and do it in a room.
Wow. And
I'm pretty damn sure that Guy coached me for that Enterprise audition, if I'm not mistook. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was very nice to have them on. You know, I think that by the 4th season and all that stuff with the Section 51, is it?
31. Section 31.
So 31, sorry. I gave it 20 extra points. I've heard, I think I know the couple that are doing that. They're developing a show about that. I heard.
There you go.
So you never know. I'll have to get my hair cut again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was quite fun, that sort of duplicity and the reason behind it. And I had just great scenes with Scott, didn't I, when I was in the brig, and they were, that would have been nice. It's a shame we got cancelled, man. We could have done another 2 years at least, if not 3. And but TV politics, man, there was nowhere for us to go, unfortunately.
Right.
We cost too much money to be somewhere else and to make it a cheaper show. And I don't think Scott would have gone to Vancouver anyway because he had 2 small kids. And yeah, so it was a crying shame, really. We were a good show.
Now, you were one of the few people out there on the planet who defended the Enterprise finale. Do you still feel that that was a good episode? A lot of people just felt.
Well, I never thought it was a good episode. I thought it was clunky getting Marina and Jonathan in the show. I mean, that was a pretty clunky device. Having said that, one of the best funnest days I ever had was shooting that stuff in the kitchen galley with Jonathan. He's hilarious. And I knew him, and I really knew Marina, and I had become quite good friends through the convention circuit. And so to have them around on set for that, our final, go out was really, really lovely. And I can be quite, I'm very empathetic and I'm very passionate man, but I have an ability, when something's done, I have an ability to just turn off. And I reckon I checked out the door by then. And I was ready to go back into the trenches and go get another part. So I really wasn't, it really came home to me. We did a 10-year reunion at CBS, and I had no idea that Scott was quite so, hurt really, and upset by the fact that his show was given that rather sort of, warm send-off for him. I mean, I tell you what I've said in past times was I understand what Rick Berman and Brannon were doing. They were tying up their tenure, which was a long, it was 18 years or something. It was a long time. And with that in mind, I understood it. If I had been number 1 on the call sheet, perhaps I would have been a bit more pissed off as well.
Right.
But I wasn't. I was 4 on the call sheet, and ready to move on by then. As sad as it all was, it was and we were very lucky to have those years. And at Paramount, when it was a real studio, and we shot on those stages that had so much history, and they were iconic. I mean, the whole damn thing was iconic, in an iconic show. I mean, I pinched myself. I mean, I'm a citizen here now, and I've lived in LA for 26 years. My existence, my profile here in this town would be a very, very different one. My personal experience of living in this town would be a very, very different one had it not been for those years.
Right. All right. Yeah. So there's a feeling that Star Trek fans didn't really appreciate the show, the series Enterprise, not just the finale, as much as they might have during its run. So but they've really come around, and people really
they have
the show now. And there's a whole new generation of Star Trek fans who are discovering the show.
Yeah.
Is that what you were hearing when you're at conventions?
Oh, all the time at the conventions in the last 10, 12 years. I mean, maybe longer. I mean, we got bumped for high school football in Texas on Friday night. It wasn't an easy watch. And a lot of people, they got all up in arms about having words in the song title music thing. And I'm like, God, I had no idea what I was getting into, really, did I? But certainly in the last decade, so I finally saw your show, and it's just, frankly, it's my favorite one. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay.
Where were you 20 years ago? Right?
Could have done with you a long time ago, honey. And it's nice that it gets that recognition. And we were a good cast. Some of the scripts could have been a bit keener, but I go back to, no one's ever done this before. They wrote a show, a variation of a theme, for the best part of 20 years. I mean, hell.
So I got to ask, there's a lot of Star Trek out there again right now. There are even rumors all over the internet, if you look up Scott Bakula, that they may bring him on.
I just heard that the other day.
Onto Strange New Worlds. Yep, the one with Captain Pike. So my question is, if you got a phone call saying, hey, we'd love you to come in and play Reed again in some capacity, how open, at least, to the idea would you be?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt open. Wide open. You can do that. Yeah, no, I'd be very happy to go back and do that and play him as an older gentleman now. And yeah, it would be a lot of fun to revisit him, actually. And I tell you, to get the band back together.
Yeah.
And I'd love to. I mean, I can think of nothing more fun actually than have Scott be my boss again. And yeah, that would be cool.
And since we have just a couple of minutes left, one thing I didn't ask you was, I know you auditioned or at least read for or met with the casting director or something on J.J. Abrams' first Star Trek movie.
I was up for
Kirk's dad?
Kirk's abusive father. Yeah, I don't think that they had no idea that I'd been in a Star Trek show. It was, completely different, set of people, different casting. I went to Paramount to read for it. I went twice, and I'm sure at some point someone went, so. He was. I never heard from them again. Anyway, the part got completely stripped down to just nothing but a voiceover in the end. And but yeah, there were a couple of scenes of him, on the bottle and beating up young Kirk, and I was rather good at it.
And my last question: well, actually, I've got two questions left. Jim Conway, when we spoke to him the other day, said something about he let you run with a scene in the pilot. And then when you actually went to shoot it, he said, nope, you can't do that. Do it this way. Does this ring a bell to you? Apparently not.
Not a particular scene. I mean, I can remember back. Jim was he was a no nonsense, take no prisoners director, and he could be quite frightening. Bless him. Sorry, Jim. And he wasn't going to mollycoddle you. If you didn't like something you did, he's going to tell you. And I'm trying to think. I remember there was one long scene I had that was just all me with Jolene walking down. I think it was a damaged, tunnel way. And it was a big speech, and I had some real marks to hit. Stepping over stuff, and it was some, what I would call big boy West Wing acting, as it were, where and you've got to hit that light there for that moment, step over that, and not speak on that because you're going to look weird doing it. It was, but I seem to admit it went pretty well. I remember patting myself on the back at the end of that one, going, "Oh, you can do this. Don't worry, mate." I mean, I've done quite a bit of stuff in front of a camera up to that point, but not on a regular basis like that. And it was such a learning curve to shoot something and 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, see it on the TV and go, oh, well, that didn't work, did it? Or that works really well. And but I don't remember Jim. Yeah, sorry.
No,
I don't remember one particular moment of him saying, do it like that, or letting me have it in. But I was always open to. One thing I pride myself on is, as a British actor, is what we do. I'll give you the same take over and over again until you tell me to do something different. Yeah, literally, breath for breath, beat for beat, look for look. It'll be a fine, well-oiled machine until you say, do something different. I'm going to do it the way I think would be best. If I was directing it, I would have the actor do it like this until you tell me something different. And then sometimes if the director tells me to do something different, I think he's wrong. That's a very, very good idea. Rafe Richardson used to do this. What a jolly good idea. And then you go back and do exactly the same thing again.
I will look up and see if I can find what Jim said.
Well, I'd be interested to hear what that was.
Answer my last question. Finish this sentence without using the word prosper. Live long and blank.
Live long and be happy.
There you go. Hey, thank you, Dom. Thank you, Jim. And thanks everyone at home for keeping the faith. You've been watching the Companion Star Trek Enterprise 20th anniversary celebration with me, Ian Spelling. So thanks for joining us. And don't forget, you can find more in-depth interviews on your favorite sci-fi shows at thecompanion.app. And we appreciate you being with us. Thank you. Thanks, Dom. You be well.
Pleasure. Thanks, Ian.
Be well. Thanks.
All right, buddy.
Bye-bye.